My name's Greiman, and I've been working as an artist, well, pretty much all my life, but professionally since about 1998. I worked in the pre-press industry, which is basically part of the printing industry, for about 19 years. But the whole time I was also doing freelance artwork, which is basically a level of self-employment. And then that kind of built up to more and more, and I finally decided, well, I'm going to take a shot at this and go out and get into my business full time. And so I started painting a lot of murals around town, and then I got illustration work and graphic design work, and then I got the opportunity to teach for 12 years at what was originally Bradley Academy here in New York, and then it became the Art Institute. And then I left and I continued working in graphic design, some part-time jobs in there to fill out the income. And then last year I made the decision to get back into full-time. So I've been doing a lot of murals and illustration and graphic design work.
What's your backstory? What got you interested in wanting to create art?
Wow, that starts really from even before I was your age. I would start out just like laying on the living room floor and drawing because I enjoyed it. And then I'd get out in nature and take my drawing pad and draw things I'd see and just do more and more drawing. And then as I went through elementary school, kind of became the kid in the class who was known as the artist. So I drew things on when I had to draw a map on the wall for the teacher, I was the one who was chosen for it. So it just kind of evolved, but it really did start, I would say, 4 or 5 years old.
Walk me through your past and present experiences with art. Starting as a child, tell us about what you hope that the future will hold.
I'm sorry, could you run that by me again?
Walk me through your past and present experiences with art. Starting as a child, tell us about what you hope your future will hold.
Oh, okay. Well, as I said, I started really young, just drawing, and then it wasn't until I was maybe in my early teens that I started painting, and I found I had a real knack for color, and color excited me. So I continued with drawing and the painting for many years, and then got more and more into painting. I especially got into acrylic painting. But in my teen years, I still wasn't too sure about what my career path would be. At first I was going to be a forester, then I was going to be a forest ranger, and then by early 12th grade I made the decision, yeah, I'm going to be an artist. So I became a student at what was then called the York Academy of Arts. That's gone through many evolutions. It became Antonelli Institute, then became Bradley Academy. But the thing is, I met a lot of people who were like me, and I also met some very interesting instructors, and it got me doing even more and more and seeing things beyond my own little world. I think that's a part of growing up that you guys want to really embrace, is that you got to get out there into the world and see what other people are doing and be influenced by them. So like many people, then I got a job right away out of art school. I was working for a printing company, but I wasn't too crazy about it. But I was their staff artist. I pretty much did all the artwork that came in. And so I kind of jumped around between jobs, and pretty much always was freelancing, doing the independent work. And then, as I said, I went into the pre-press industry and continuing doing freelance work, and the freelance work began to pick up, and that's when I quit that industry and went into my self-employment. But what was interesting was that within a month of doing that, I got the offer to teach, so I did that for 12 years. And then I left that and went into working as a full-time graphic designer, and then left that, and I'm back now full-time in self-employment. So what does the future hold? It's one of those things where throughout your life you ask yourself that question, and you do want to plan for the future, but at the same time, I think the biggest answer is, I don't know. So plan for the future, but kind of live your life with a sense of adventure, of, well, I don't know what's coming down the road. I'm going to make plans for my future to be as good as it can be, but at the same time, enjoy the fact that life is an adventure and see what comes your way and what are you going to do with it.
Use a variety of mediums when you create art. Talk to us about them, including affordances and constraints.
Okay, well, I've always worked in what they call conventional mediums, paint, charcoal, drawing pencil, whatever. But when I went to work in the pre-press industry, one thing that started happening was what was called the Mac Revolution, short for Macintosh. Macintosh computers came into being, and suddenly all the things that we were doing by hand we could now do on a computer. So I had to immediately educate myself and be educated about the programs that industry was using. And the programs that industry was using were the Adobe programs, Adobe Photoshop and Illustrator. And there was a program for creating book pages called Quark, but that's kind of phased out now. It's basically the InDesign program. So I got more and more into that, and one of the cool things I saw was, yes, I'm working as a conventional artist, working with paint and drawing mediums, but look at what I can do on the computer too. So as time went on, I reached a point where I was combining the two. So I might do a conventional illustration like in pencil and paint, scan it into the computer, and then go in and add some additional effects. Now, a good example of that would be, I'm working on this novel about Superboy, and in this illustration, this one particular illustration, Superboy is flying over one of the Great Lakes into Chicago, and and it's at night, and off in the distance, you can see the Milky Way galaxy in the sky. Well, what I decided to do was, rather than paint that in, I left that part of the illustration blank, and I scanned it into my computer, and I brought it up in Photoshop, and then in Photoshop, I added the sky with the Milky Way in. So what's really great now is I can combine my conventional mediums, pencil and paper, drawing pencils and paint, with what I do on the computer. So all in all, it works out really, really good.
Explain why or why not you think art makes an impact in our community, and why do you think art is special?
Well, art, I guess you could say, has far-reaching effects. Now, one thing you'll find if you work as an artist is, as I said, you draw inspiration from a lot of different places, different people, different artists. You can get inspiration from mathematicians, you can get inspiration from scientists, and you tap into their knowledge, and then you bring that together into whatever it is you want to say in a visual medium. And the great thing about that then is, so let's say I create a painting based on my research from all these different subject matters, and then I put that painting out there, and then people come along and they see it, and they might give it, each person gives it their own interpretation. So it might open their minds to thinking, well, maybe the way I was thinking about something, there's something beyond that. And that's basically what I want to do with my artwork. I want people to look at my artwork and say, well, what is it that Brett is trying to say to me in a visual medium? And now what am I, the viewer, getting from that, and does that change my way of thinking or my perceptions on things? So on a really, if you look at the big picture is art can increase commerce. It can bring people, as we were talking earlier, to the coffee shops or galleries or whatever happening, in your town. So it stimulates business, but it also stimulates people's thinking about things. What could be? Maybe my view of things wasn't everything it could be. Maybe there are other possibilities, and that's what life is really all about. What are all the possibilities? And I think art helps you to consider those possibilities.
And that was all the questions.
Okay. What's interesting about this painting is it's a scene near where I live, and I was designing the painting, working on the composition in my studio, and I had the TV on, and the weatherman comes on. It's a day in May, and he says, we have a tornado warning issued for your area. And then he goes into talking about, well, sometimes some conditions that you see before a tornado forms. And he remarked about how sometimes the sky will turn green. And I thought to myself, if I make the sky green, I can play all kinds of colors and color temperatures in this painting. So what I did, just based on, and that weatherman will never know, he changed the course of a piece of artwork. But what I did then was, with painting the sky green, I was able to imply the sense of fear of a tornado forming. So what I did was I made the trees red with this blue shadow area and playing off the green, and then these intense colors down here. So that intensity gives you the sense of, well, there's something about to happen here. So no, there's no tornado shown. Then that's one thing you want to think, is you don't always have to show everything that you might be thinking. You can imply it. So what happened was, 2 years after I painted this, York Fest was running what they call a juried exhibition, where artists bring in their work, and a person selected who's an expert in art makes a decision as to what is going to be the painting that gets awarded. And the lady who was our juror, she was from the Barnes Foundation, which is the largest private collection of Impressionist art. So I entered because I thought to myself, well, she really knows Impressionist art, and that's really what this is. And what happened was, she gave us the Best of Show award. So then it gets even more interesting beyond that. 2 years after that, a person who's very familiar with the painting, who's in charge of York Fest, selected me as the York Fest featured artist. So what happened then is they put up billboards and created T-shirts and with it on to promote the event. So that's some of what I do conventionally. But then, you know, I talked to you about, I also work on computer mediums. Well, actually, let me just show you one more thing conventional that I worked on. As I said, I'm working on a novel about Superboy. It's called Superboy, Slave of the Magic Mirror. And it's a huge book. It's going to be over 600 pages. I have 2 more illustrations to do for it. Then I'm also designing the book, and I'm going to lay out the pages all on computer. But I'm working closely with the author, and I thought what I'd do here is show you the stages that this goes through. So what the author does is he tells me what needs to be shown in a particular scene. So in this case, Superboy is hypnotized by a mirror made out of kryptonite, so it's completely powerless. So, as I said, the author tells me what needs to be shown, so my first step then is to start visualizing it. Well, this is what I picture that scene is going to look like. This is what's called a rough. So he gets back to me, change this, change that. You know, so I have what I do is I write notes on here based on his review of it. And then I create what's called a working drawing. Now, the cool thing about a working drawing is it's supposed to show everything in detail. And the cool thing about it, though, is you can erase it, you can get it all smudged up, you can move things around, whatever it is you need to do. So in that case, well, I'm just going to show you like this. That's the working drawing. So the author came back with just a few changes. Okay, so here this is actually a copy of the working drawing. He wanted Lex Luthor shifted in more on the couch and more of an expression of horror on Superboy's face, and he has to be hypnotized. So what I did then, and employing my computer skills here on this conventional art, rather than redrawing it, I pulled it up in Photoshop on my computer and made those changes, but in this case you can see I shifted Lex Luthor's, I selected Lex Luthor in Photoshop with the selection tool. You just draw like what they call marching ants around him, and I shifted him in, and then I didn't have to redraw it. So when I'm done then, I put this, I take the finished working drawing, I put graphite paper underneath and the illustration board underneath that, and all you have to do, the cool thing about it is you've got the drawing already done, so now all you have to do is transfer it through the carbon paper, also called transfer paper or graphite paper. You transfer it to the board, and so there's your finished illustration. Now this is all conventional mediums, but it's four mediums. It starts off with graphite, which is drawing pencil. And then on top of that, I apply colored pencil. And then on top of that, I apply acrylic. And the final layer of paint is a paint called gouache. And one of the cool things about gouache, now when you're working with acrylic, once it dries, unless you add a special medium that they have out now, once it dries, it's turned into hard plastic. It won't re-wet. But the cool thing about gouache is once it's dry, you can re-wet it and move it around or even take it off. So that's one of the conventional things that I've done. Oh, here's just one more. This is a book by Judy Wolfman, who I believe you guys have talked with. It's about young Milton Hershey, who started the Hershey Chocolate Company. So this one hasn't been published yet, but Judy's working on it. I have a feeling she'll make it happen. But that one was done basically as a sample. Okay, then another illustration project, and this one has been published, as you can see here. We've got the book right here. It's called Slave No More, and Judy did a presentation about Henry Box Brown. But I did the illustrations for it, and these, with one exception, these were all done on computer. I want to find the one that was conventional. It's not a big book, so it shouldn't be hard. Oh, here we go. Now, what's interesting about this one is this shows two of the young slaves. Their figures I actually drew in drawing pencil, also called graphite, but then I scanned it into Photoshop, and in Photoshop is where I added the background. So there again, don't think of I'm going to only work in conventional mediums or I'm going to only work in computer mediums. The beauty of it is you can combine the two. So, and on a note about this, Judy and I, along with a musician named Jessica Buck, are doing a presentation at the Loretta Claiborne building this Saturday from 1 to 3. And I'll leave this with you in case any of you want to attend. But Judy will be doing readings from the book, and Jessica will be performing music from that period. And what I'm going to be doing is I have this large printout of Henry Box Brown escaping the box. He was in that box for close to 30 hours. He was shipped from Virginia to Philadelphia, in some cases upside down. Can you imagine that? Yeah. So in this huge, I have this print that's 4 feet wide by 5 feet high. He's escaping the box. And what I'm going to have people do is they'll be listening to Judy's story and Jessica's music. Then they can come over and I'll have markers and crayons, and they can color in this large mural of Henry Brown. But what I'm asking people to do is don't color it with just filling in spaces. Think about the feelings that the music and the story give you, and write those words out and choose colors that reflect your feelings from those words. So I'll leave this with you today, and in case anybody wants to go, they have the information. And the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to donate a copy of A Slave No More to your library. So check that out. Fascinating story. I think you'll be amazed by it. I believe that's it. Yes. Okay.